The dying light of sunset cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Keeler, California. As Sarah Holden clutched her daughter Emma's feverish hand, desperation clawing at her heart like a wild animal. The 6-year-old's normally rosy cheeks had turned ashen, her breathing shallow and labored in the stifling heat of their small cabin on the edge of town. Sarah had nothing left, no money, no medicine, and time was running out. The summer of 1878 had been particularly harsh in the Owens Valley. The drought had withered crops and spirits alike in the small mining town nestled at the edge of the Inyo Mountains. Once a bustling silver mining community, Keeler now struggled, as the mines yielded less with each passing year. Sarah had been left alone to fend for herself and Emma after her husband died in a mine collapse 2 years earlier, leaving behind nothing but debts and memories. "Mama," Emma whispered, her cracked lips barely moving as she tried to speak. "I'm thirsty." Sarah dampened a cloth and pressed it gently to Emma's lips. "Here, sweetheart, just a little longer and you'll feel better." The lie tasted bitter in her mouth. The local doctor had visited that morning, his grim diagnosis still ringing in her ears: mountain fever, and without proper medicine, Emma wouldn't last another 2 days. "She needs quinine," Dr. Fuller had said, packing up his worn leather bag. "And some willow bark extract wouldn't hurt. But I've run out, and the next supply wagon isn't due for a week." "Where can I get it sooner?" Sarah had asked, her voice breaking. Nearest place would be Carson City, but that's more than 100 miles north. There's also a chance the trading post at Fort Independence might have some. "It's closer, about 30 miles south." Sarah had nodded, mentally counting the coins in the small tin box under her bed. $3.42, not nearly enough for medicine, let alone hiring someone to fetch it. A knock at the door startled Sarah from her thoughts. She tucked the thin blanket around Emma and crossed the one-room cabin to answer it. Samuel Jackson stood on her porch, hat in hand, the dying sunlight glinting off his dark blonde hair. At 30 years old, Sam was one of the most respected cowboys in the area, working as trail boss for the Walker Cattle Ranch outside of town. His blue eyes held concern as he looked past Sarah to the small form on the bed. "Evening, Mrs. Holden. I heard about Emma from Doc Fuller. How's she doing?" Sarah pushed back a strand of auburn hair that had escaped her bun. "Not well, Mr. Jackson. The doctor says she needs medicine we don't have." Sam nodded, his weathered face solemn. "That's why I'm here. Doc mentioned she needs quinine." "Yes, but the nearest supply is at Fort Independence and I can't," her voice caught, pride warring with desperation. "I know," Sam said quietly. "I've come to offer my help." Sarah stared at him, confused. She knew Sam only in passing. He'd bought eggs from her a few times when he was in town, and once had fixed her leaking roof after a particularly bad storm. They'd exchanged polite conversation, nothing more. "Why would you help us?" she asked, suspicion edging her voice. In her experience, men didn't offer help without expecting something in return. Sam shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with her directness. "Because it's the right thing to do, Mrs. Holden. No child should suffer when there's a chance to help." Emma's cough broke the silence between them, a harsh, rattling sound that tore at Sarah's heart. "I'll ride to Fort Independence tonight," Sam continued. "If they have what Emma needs, I'll bring it back by dawn." Sarah's fingers gripped the doorframe. "Mr. Jackson, I can't pay you." "Not now, maybe not ever." A slight smile crossed his face. "I'm not asking for payment, madam." Hope flickered in Sarah's chest for the first time since Emma had fallen ill 3 days ago. "You'd ride 60 miles round trip in the dark for strangers." "Your neighbors, not strangers," he corrected gently. "And yes, I would. My horse Midnight can make the trip faster than most. If I leave now, I can be at the fort by midnight." Tears threatened, but Sarah blinked them away. She'd learned long ago that crying solved nothing. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I don't know what else to say." "No need to say anything. Just take care of your girl until I get back." He settled his hat back on his head. "Do you have anything of Emma's I could bring?" Sometimes the traders need convincing, and seeing something that belongs to a sick child might help loosen their grip on their medicines. Sarah hesitated only briefly before retrieving Emma's small rag doll, the one her husband had given her before he died. "Will this do?" Sam nodded, carefully placing the doll inside his jacket. "I'll keep it safe and bring it back with the medicine." "Godspeed, Mr. Jackson," Sarah whispered as he turned toward his horse, a magnificent black stallion tied to her front railing. "I'll be back before you know it, Mrs. Holden," he called over his shoulder, swinging easily into the saddle. With a tip of his hat, he urged Midnight into a gallop, dust swirling in his wake as they disappeared into the gathering darkness. Sarah watched until they were out of sight, then returned to Emma's bedside, offering up a silent prayer that Sam Jackson would return in time. Sam rode hard along the eastern base of the Sierra Nevada mountains, the moonlight casting an eerie glow across the desolate landscape. Midnight's hooves pounded a steady rhythm on the hard, packed earth, his powerful muscles working tirelessly as they ate up the miles between Keeler and Fort Independence. The night air grew cooler as they climbed higher into the foothills, a welcome relief from the day's heat. Sam's mind wandered to Sarah Holden and her daughter. He'd noticed the young widow around town since she'd arrived with her husband about 3 years ago. After Thomas Holden's death, he'd watched from afar as she stubbornly built a life for herself and Emma, selling eggs and vegetables from her small garden, taking and mending when she could get it. She never asked for charity, though he knew the townspeople helped when she would allow it. There was something about Sarah's fierce independence that had caught his attention, so different from the simpering women who batted their eyelashes at him in the town's only saloon. Her auburn hair was always neatly pinned back, her clothes mended but clean, and despite her circumstances, she carried herself with dignity. And now her daughter was dying. Sam urged Midnight to greater speed, knowing the stallion could handle the pace. The small rag doll pressed against his chest inside his jacket, a reminder of what was at stake. The journey to Fort Independence normally took most travelers a full day, but Sam knew shortcuts across the valleys that shaved off precious time. Still, the ride was treacherous in the dark, with hidden gullies and rock formations that could send horse and rider tumbling. Around midnight, the outline of Fort Independence appeared on the horizon. The military outpost was small but strategic, situated to protect settlers and the nearby town from Indian attacks, though those had grown rare in recent years. More importantly for Sam's purposes, the fort maintained a trading post that served both soldiers and local tribes, often stocking medicines that weren't available in smaller settlements like Keeler. As he approached the fort's gates, a sentry called out, "Halt and identify yourself." "Sam Jackson from Keeler," he shouted back, reining Midnight to a stop. "I need medicine for a sick child, matter of life and death." The sentry lowered his rifle and motioned to someone inside the fort. Moments later, the gates creaked open just wide enough to admit a rider. "Trading posts closed for the night," the sentry informed him as Sam rode through. "But Doc Pearson might be able to help. Head for the infirmary second building on the left." Sam nodded his thanks and dismounted, leading Midnight toward the indicated building. The fort was quiet at this hour, with only a few soldiers on night duty visible in the pale moonlight. He tied Midnight to a hitching post and approached the infirmary door, knocking firmly. After a moment, the The door opened to reveal a middle-aged man with graying hair and spectacles perched on his nose. "What's the emergency?" he asked, taking in Sam's trail-worn appearance. "I've ridden from Keeler," Sam explained quickly. "There's a 6-year-old girl there with mountain fever. Doc Fuller says she needs quinine and willow bark extract, and we've none to be had in town. I was hoping the trading post might have some." The military doctor's expression grew thoughtful. "The trading post does have quinine, but Sergeant Matthews won't open it before morning, regulations and all. However," he stepped back, gesturing for Sam to enter, "I might be able to help. Come in." The infirmary was clean and orderly, with several empty beds along one wall. A cabinet filled with bottles and medical supplies stood against the opposite wall, and Dr. Pearson headed straight for it. "Mountain fever, you say? How long has she been ill?" "3 days, according to her mother," Sam replied, watching as the doctor unlocked the cabinet and began searching through its contents. "Symptoms: high fever, weakness, difficulty breathing." Doc Fuller seemed certain about the diagnosis. Dr. Pearson nodded, selecting several bottles. "Fuller's a good physician. If he says it's mountain fever, then it likely is." He turned back to Sam. "I can provide you with quinine and willow bark extract from my own supplies. The Army keeps me well stocked, and I'd rather see medicine used than sitting on a shelf." Relief washed over Sam. "Thank you, doctor. You're saving a life tonight. I need to know the child's weight and age to measure the proper dosage," Dr. Pearson said, placing the bottles on a small table. 6 years old, Sam replied. "As for weight, I'm not certain. She's small for her age from what I could tell." Dr. Pearson carefully measured out powders, placing them in small paper packets. "I'll give you enough for 5 days' treatment. The mother should mix 1 packet in water 3 times a day. The willow bark extract is for the fever, 20 drops in water every 4 hours. As the doctor worked, he continued talking. "You've ridden a long way for this child. Is she family?" "No," Sam admitted. "Just neighbors in need, doctor." Pearson glanced up, a knowing look in his eyes. "And the mother?" Sam felt his face warm slightly. "A widow. Her husband died in a mining accident 2 years ago." "I see." The doctor placed the medicines in a small leather pouch. "Instructions are written here. Make sure the mother understands the dosages. Too much quinine can be as dangerous as the fever itself." "I'll make sure she understands," Sam promised, reaching for his money pouch. Dr. Pearson waved away the offer of payment. "Consider it my contribution to your good deed. Just make sure that little girl gets better." Sam tucked the precious medicine pouch into his jacket alongside Emma's doll. "I can't thank you enough, doctor." "Thank me by getting that medicine back to Keeler as quickly as you can," Dr. Pearson replied, walking him to the door. "Would you like to rest your horse before heading back?" Sam shook his head. "No time. The child might not make it to morning." The doctor nodded in understanding. "Safe journey, then. The moon's full tonight should light your way home." Back outside, Sam patted Midnight's neck before mounting. "One more long ride, old friend," he murmured. The stallion snorted as if in agreement, pawing at the ground, ready to run. With a final wave to the sentry, Sam guided Midnight back through the gates and onto the dark trail leading north to Keeler. The return journey would be just as challenging, but now he carried precious hope in his pocket. The night seemed to stretch endlessly as Midnight thundered across the valley floor, eating up miles with his powerful stride. Sam occasionally allowed the horse to slow to a trot to catch his breath, but time was against them. The moon tracked slowly across the sky, marking the passing hours as they rode. About halfway back to Keeler, disaster struck. Midnight stepped in a hidden gopher hole, stumbling badly. Sam felt the horse's gait falter, then right itself, but something was wrong. A slight limp developed, growing more pronounced with each stride. "Whoa, boy," Sam called, pulling back gently on the reins and guiding Midnight to a stop. He dismounted quickly and ran his hands down the stallion's right foreleg, feeling for heat or swelling. Midnight flinched when Sam's fingers probed near the fetlock. "Damn," Sam muttered. It wasn't a severe injury, but pushing Midnight could make it worse. Yet they were still a good 15 miles from Keeler, and walking would take too long. Sam looked around, assessing their options. They were near the old Wilson homestead, abandoned after Apache raids several years back. If memory served, there was a small creek nearby where they could rest briefly. "Come on, boy," he said gently, leading Midnight toward the creek. The horse limped alongside him, his breathing labored from the hard run. At the creek, Sam let Midnight drink while he considered his options. The moon was lower in the sky now, perhaps 3 or 4 hours until dawn. Emma needed the medicine as soon as possible. After allowing Midnight a short rest, Sam checked the leg again. The horse would be able to continue, but at a slower pace. Sam remounted, keeping the stallion to a walk for a quarter mile, then gradually increased to a slow trot. Midnight was game, but Sam could feel the slight hitch in his stride. "Just a little farther," Sam encouraged, though he knew they would be lucky to reach Keeler by dawn at this pace. The pre-dawn light was just beginning to soften the eastern sky when Sam heard hoofbeats approaching. He reached for the revolver at his hip, wary of outlaws who might prey on lone travelers. A moment later, a rider appeared on the trail ahead, and Sam relaxed as he recognized Joe Turner, one of the ranch hands from the Walker spread. "Sam," Joe called, guiding his sorrel gelding alongside. "Been looking for you since midnight. Mrs. Walker sent us out when she heard about your errand." "Midnight took a bad step," Sam explained briefly. "How's the child?" "Holding on, last I heard," Joe replied. "But folks are worried. Here, take my horse. He's fresh, and I can walk Midnight back slow." Sam didn't hesitate. After transferring his saddle to Joe's horse, he carefully removed the medicine pouch and Emma's doll from his jacket. "Take good care of him," Sam instructed, patting Midnight's neck one last time. "He's earned a long rest after tonight." "Will do, boss," Joe promised. "Now get going. That little girl's waiting on you." With a nod of thanks, Sam swung into the saddle and urged the sorrel into a gallop, the medicine secure against his chest. The fresh horse responded eagerly, sensing the urgency in his rider's commands. The sun was just cresting the mountains when Sam rode into Keeler, the town beginning to stir for the day. He headed straight for the small cabin on the edge of town, relief washing over him as he spotted smoke rising from the chimney. At least Emma was still alive. Sarah appeared in the doorway before he'd fully dismounted, her face pale with exhaustion, auburn hair escaping from its pins. Dark circles underlined her green eyes, but hope flared in them as she spotted the pouch in his hand. "You found it?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Sam nodded, striding quickly to the porch. "Quinine and willow bark extract. Dr. Pearson at the fort prepared it himself with instructions." He handed her the pouch, then reached into his jacket for the rag doll. "And I believe this belongs to Emma." Sarah clutched the pouch and doll to her chest, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how." "How is she?" Sam asked, following Sarah inside the cabin. The small room was neat but sparsely furnished, with a cookstove along one wall, a small table with 2 chairs, and a curtained-off area that presumably contained Sarah's bed. Emma lay on a narrow cot near the stove, her face flushed with fever, blonde hair damp with sweat. "She had a rough night," Sarah admitted, already opening the pouch to read the doctor's instructions. "Her breathing's been worse this past hour." Sam watched as Sarah carefully measured the quinine into a cup of water, stirring until it dissolved. She sat on the edge of the cot and gently lifted Emma's head. "Emma, sweetheart," she coaxed, "I need you to drink this medicine. It will help you feel better." The child's eyelids fluttered, but she didn't fully wake. Sarah pressed the cup to her lips, dribbling small amounts into her mouth and encouraging her to swallow. It was slow work, but eventually the cup was empty. "The doctor said it will take time to work," Sam said quietly, but he seemed confident it would help. Sarah nodded, placing Emma's rag doll beside her on the pillow. "I can never repay what you've done, Mr. Jackson." "Sam, please," he corrected gently. "And there's no debt to repay. I'm just glad I could help." For the first time, he noticed how truly exhausted Sarah looked. She'd clearly been awake all night watching over Emma, and the strain of the past few days showed in her face. "You should rest," he suggested. "I could stay with Emma while you sleep for a few hours." Surprise flickered across Sarah's face. "You've been riding all night." "You must be exhausted yourself," Sam shrugged. "I'm used to long hours in the saddle, and I'd like to see this through if you don't mind." After a moment's hesitation, Sarah nodded. "I am tired," she admitted, "if you're sure you don't mind." "Not at all." "I'll wake you when it's time for Emma's next dose." Sarah disappeared behind the curtain, and Sam settled into a chair beside Emma's cot. The child's breathing seemed slightly easier already, though he wasn't sure if that was wishful thinking on his part. He laid a gentle hand on her forehead, still burning with fever, but perhaps not quite as hot as before. As he kept his vigil, Sam reflected on the events that had brought him here. He'd always tried to help his neighbors when he could, but something about this situation, about Sarah and Emma specifically, had compelled him to go far beyond ordinary neighborliness. There was a strength in Sarah that he admired, a quiet dignity in the face of hardship that spoke to something deep within him. Emma stirred, mumbling in her sleep, and Sam adjusted the light blanket covering her. "You're going to be just fine," he whispered. "Your mama and I are making sure of it." The morning passed quietly, with Sam administering the willow bark extract at the appointed time. By mid-morning, Emma's fever seemed to be easing slightly, and her breathing had become less labored. Sarah emerged from behind the curtain looking somewhat refreshed, though worry still lined her face. "Any change?" she asked immediately, coming to check on Emma. "I think the fever might be coming down a bit," Sam replied, standing to offer Sarah the chair. "She seems to be resting more comfortably." Sarah placed a hand on Emma's forehead, then leaned down to kiss her daughter's cheek. "You might be right," she said, hope coloring her voice. "Oh, please let this medicine work." "Doc Pearson seemed confident it would," Sam assured her. "He said to continue the doses for 5 days, even if she seems better sooner." Sarah nodded, then looked up at Sam with concern. "You must be starving. Let me fix you something to eat, it's the least I can do." Before he could protest, Sarah was stoking the fire in the cook stove and reaching for a pan. "I don't have much," she apologized, "but I can make some cornbread and there's a bit of bacon left." Sam's stomach growled at the mention of food, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon. "That sounds wonderful," he admitted. "Thank you." As Sarah prepared the simple meal, Sam found himself watching her movements, the efficient way she worked, the gentle manner in which she checked on Emma between tasks. There was a quiet grace about her that drew him, so different from the boisterous energy of the cowboys he worked with daily. "I should probably head back to the ranch once I've eaten," Sam said reluctantly. "The boss will be wondering where I am." Sarah paused in her cooking, turning to look at him. "Of course. You've already done far more than anyone could expect." She hesitated, then added softly, "But please know you're welcome to check on Emma whenever you'd like." Something warm unfurled in Sam's chest at her words. "I'd like that very much," he replied. "Maybe I could stop by tomorrow evening." "We'd both like that," Sarah said, a smile touching her lips for the first time since he'd arrived at her door the previous evening. After a hearty breakfast, Sam took his leave, promising to return the next day. As he rode toward the Walker Ranch, he found himself already looking forward to seeing Sarah and Emma again, a feeling that both surprised and pleased him. True to his word, Sam returned to the Holden cabin the following evening, bringing fresh beef from the Walker Ranch and a bundle of wildflowers he'd picked along the way. He was heartened to find Emma awake, her fever much reduced, though she was still weak and tired easily. "Mr. Jackson," she exclaimed when he entered, her voice thin but her eyes bright with recognition. "Mama said you brought my doll back and got medicine to make me better." Sam smiled, placing the wildflowers in a jar of water Sarah hastily provided. "I did, Miss Emma. And I'm mighty pleased to see the medicine is working." "Emma, what do we say to Mr. Jackson?" Sarah prompted gently. "Thank you for saving me," the child said solemnly, her blue eyes serious in her pale face. "You're very welcome," Sam replied, equally serious. "I brought something else for you and your mama." He handed Sarah the package of beef. "Mrs. Walker sent it with her compliments." Sarah accepted the gift with gratitude. "Please thank Mrs. Walker for us. This is very generous." As Sarah prepared the meat for cooking, Sam sat with Emma, listening to her chatter about her doll and the pictures she saw in the clouds outside her window. Though still recovering, her natural spirit was clearly returning, much to Sam's relief. That evening established a pattern that would continue for weeks to come. Sam visited the Holden cabin nearly every evening, often bringing small gifts, fresh vegetables from the ranch garden, a new ribbon for Emma's hair, or a book of children's stories he'd purchased in Carson City during a cattle drive. Emma's recovery was steady but slow. The mountain fever had weakened her significantly, and there were days when she seemed to take a step backward for every 2 steps forward. During one frightening night when her fever spiked again, Sam rode for Dr. Fuller and stayed until dawn, helping Sarah apply cool compresses to Emma's overheated body. Through these shared vigils and quiet evenings, something deeper began to grow between Sam and Sarah. Their conversations, initially centered on Emma's health, gradually expanded to include their own lives and dreams. Sam learned about Sarah's childhood in Missouri, her marriage to Thomas at 18, and their journey west seeking opportunity. In turn, he shared stories of growing up on a small farm in Kansas, losing his parents to influenza when he was 16, and finding his way to California, where his skill with horses had earned him a place at the Walker Ranch. By midsummer, Emma was well enough to sit on the porch swing Sam had built for her, watching the town's 4th of July celebration from a distance, oohing and aahing at the fireworks that burst over Keeler's Main Street. Sam sat between mother and daughter, acutely aware of Sarah's shoulder pressed against his in the darkness, the subtle scent of lavender that clung to her hair. "This is the best 4th ever," Emma declared sleepily, as Sam carried her back inside when the festivities ended. "Even better than when Papa was alive." Sarah's quick intake of breath told Sam that Emma rarely mentioned her father. He settled the drowsy child in her bed, now moved to the small alcove Sam had helped build off the main room, giving both Sarah and Emma more privacy. "Did I say something wrong?" Emma asked, noticing her mother's expression. Sarah smoothed Emma's blonde curls back from her forehead. "No, sweetheart, I'm glad you had a good time. Now get some sleep." After Emma had drifted off, Sam and Sarah sat at the small table, sharing a cup of coffee in the lamplight. Sarah seemed troubled, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup absently. "What's wrong?" Sam asked quietly. Sarah sighed. It's just, Emma mentioned Thomas. She rarely does anymore. Sometimes I worry she's forgetting him. Sam considered his words carefully. Children adapt. It doesn't mean she's forgetting him, just that she's making room for new memories. Like memories with you? Sarah asked, her green eyes meeting his. The directness of her question caught him off guard. I suppose so, yes. You've become important to her, Sarah continued, to both of us. Sam's heart quickened. You've both become important to me too, Sarah, more than I expected. A flush crept into her cheeks, visible even in the dim lamplight. People in town are talking, you know, about your frequent visits here. Does that bother you? He asked, suddenly concerned that he'd compromised her reputation. No, she answered honestly. But I wonder, what are your intentions, Sam? You've been coming here nearly every day for 2 months. We've shared meals and conversations, and I need to know where this is leading, for Emma's sake as much as my own. Sam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. Her fingers were slender but strong, marked by the hard work that defined her life. I thought my intentions were clear, but I see now I should have spoken plainly before this. He took a deep breath. Sarah, that night I rode to Fort Independence. I did it because a child needed help. But in the weeks since, I've come to care for you and Emma as more than just neighbors or friends. I find myself thinking about you during the day, looking forward to these evenings more than anything else. Sarah's fingers tightened around his. And I look forward to seeing you ride up to our door, she admitted softly. Emma watches for you from the window each afternoon. I'd like to court you properly, Sarah, Sam said, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. With your permission. A smile bloomed across her face, transforming her features from merely pretty to truly beautiful. I would like that very much, she whispered. The remainder of the summer passed in a golden haze for Sam. He continued his work at the Walker Ranch during the days, but his evenings belonged to Sarah and Emma. As Emma's strength returned, their outings expanded. They had picnics by the creek, took short rides in the buggy Sam borrowed from the ranch, and once, memorably, attended the town's summer dance together, raising more than a few eyebrows among Keeler's residents. Mrs. Walker, the ranch owner's wife, took a particular interest in the developing relationship, often sending Sam home early with fresh baked goods or preserves for that sweet little family. Sam found himself increasingly thinking of Sarah and Emma in just those terms as his family, or at least as the family he hoped they would become. By late August, Emma was fully recovered, her cheeks once again rosy, her energy sometimes outpacing even Sam's. She had taken to calling him Uncle Sam, a designation that both amused and touched him, though he privately hoped for a different title someday. One warm evening in early September, Sam arrived at the cabin with a special purpose in mind. He'd spoken to Reverend Thomas the previous Sunday, confirming that there would be no impediment to his plans. He'd also had a frank conversation with Mrs. Walker, who had immediately grasped his intentions and pressed a small velvet box into his hands. It was my mother's, she'd explained. I have no daughter to give it to, and you've been like a son to me and Harold these past years. I'd be honored if you'd use it. Now, with the ring burning a hole in his pocket, Sam watched as Emma chased fireflies in the yard while Sarah cleaned up after their supper. He helped dry the dishes, rehearsing his words in his mind, uncharacteristically nervous. You're quiet tonight, Sarah observed, hanging the dishcloth to dry. Hard day at the ranch. No, nothing like that, Sam assured her. I was just thinking about how much has changed since that night in June when I rode to your door. Sarah's expression softened. Everything changed that night, she agreed. You saved Emma's life, and found my own in the process, Sam added quietly. Sarah, there's something I'd like to ask you. Something important. A flicker of understanding crossed her face. Perhaps we should check on Emma first, she suggested, her voice slightly breathless. They stepped onto the porch together, watching as Emma darted about the yard, a jar of captured fireflies clutched in her small hands. The sight of her, healthy and vibrant, filled Sam with certainty about what he was about to do. Emma, he called. Would you come here for a minute, please? The child obediently trotted to the porch, her face flushed with excitement. Look how many I caught, she exclaimed, holding up the jar. That's impressive, Sam acknowledged. But I need to ask you and your mama something important. Emma's eyes widened. Is it a secret? Not exactly. Sam knelt down to be at eye level with her. Emma, you know I care about you and your mama very much, don't you? The little girl nodded solemnly. And we care about you too, Uncle Sam. Mama smiles all the time now, even when you're not here. Sarah made a small sound that might have been embarrassment or laughter, but Sam kept his focus on Emma. That's good to hear, because I was wondering how you would feel if I wasn't Uncle Sam anymore. Emma's brow furrowed in confusion. You don't want to be my uncle. I was thinking I might like to be your papa instead, Sam explained gently, watching her expression shift from confusion to dawning comprehension. You want to marry Mama? She asked, her voice rising with excitement. If she'll have me, Sam confirmed, rising to his feet and turning to Sarah, whose hands were pressed to her mouth, eyes shining with unshed tears. What do you say, Emma? Would that be all right with you? Yes, Emma exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. Oh, yes, please. Sam smiled at her enthusiasm, then reached for Sarah's hand. And what about you, Sarah? These past months have been the happiest of my life. I've come to love both you and Emma with all my heart, and I'd be honored if you'd consider becoming my wife. Sarah's tears spilled over as Sam dropped to one knee, producing the small velvet box from his pocket. Inside nestled a delicate gold ring with a modest pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. Samuel Jackson, Sarah whispered, her voice wavering with emotion, you rode through the night to save my daughter when we were nothing to you. You've shown us kindness, respect, and love when we needed it most. Yes, I will marry you with all my heart. Sam slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to his feet, pulling Sarah into his arms. Their first kiss was sweet and tender, full of promise and shared dreams, interrupted only by Emma's delighted giggling and clapping. When do I start calling you Papa? She wanted to know, tugging at Sam's trouser leg. Sam laughed, lifting Emma into his arms. Whenever you'd like, sweetheart. But traditionally, people wait until after the wedding. How long until the wedding? Emma persisted, looking between the adults. Sam glanced at Sarah questioningly. I hadn't thought that far ahead, he admitted. What would you prefer, Sarah? Sarah's smile was radiant as she leaned against his shoulder, the three of them forming a tight circle on the porch. I don't need anything elaborate, soon would be nice. How about October? Sam suggested. That would give us time to prepare, and the weather should still be fair. October sounds perfect, Sarah agreed. Just a simple ceremony with the people who matter most. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Keeler, met with general approval and more than a few comments about how it had been obvious to everyone for months that Sam Jackson was smitten with the widow Holden. Mrs. Walker immediately took charge of wedding preparations, insisting that the ceremony be held at the ranch, where there would be ample space for guests and a proper celebration afterward. Nothing too extravagant, Sarah protested when Mrs. Walker began talking about ordering special fabrics from San Francisco for her wedding dress. Nonsense, the older woman replied firmly. Harold and I never had children of our own, and Sam's the closest thing to a son we've got. Let us do this for you both." In the end, Sarah gracefully accepted the Walkers' generosity, recognizing it for the expression of affection it truly was. The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a flurry of preparations, with Emma particularly excited about her role as flower girl. Sam, meanwhile, was busy with plans of his own. With Mr. Walker's blessing and financial backing, he purchased a small parcel of land adjacent to the ranch, where a sturdy 3-room house already stood. With help from the other ranch hands, Sam spent his spare time repairing and expanding the house, adding a 4th room that would serve as Emma's bedroom. 2 weeks before the wedding, he brought Sarah and Emma to see their new home, nervously watching their faces as they explored the freshly painted rooms, the new kitchen with its iron cookstove, and the small stable out back where Sam had already installed Midnight, now fully recovered from his injury. "It's wonderful," Sarah breathed, running her hand along the polished wooden table Sam had crafted himself. "I can't believe you did all this in such a short time." "I had help," Sam admitted, "and motivation." He watched as Emma darted from room to room, clearly delighted with her new bedroom and the window seat he'd built especially for her. "This is really going to be our house?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "Forever and always." "Forever and always," Sam confirmed. "With plenty of room for you to grow. And maybe for your family to grow too someday." The significance of his words wasn't lost on Sarah, whose cheeks colored prettily. They hadn't discussed children yet, but Sam had made sure Emma's room was large enough to eventually accommodate a sibling or two. The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, with just enough autumn chill in the air to justify the new woolen shawl Mrs. Walker had insisted on draping around Sarah's shoulders as she prepared for the ceremony. The ranch's main barn had been transformed, with hay bales arranged in rows for seating, wildflowers and ribbon decorating every available surface, and a simple arch constructed at one end where Reverend Thomas waited. Nearly everyone from Keeler had made the journey to the Walker Ranch, along with settlers from nearby homesteads and all the ranch hands and their families. Dr. Fuller sat prominently in the front row, having played such an instrumental role in bringing the couple together. Even Dr. Pearson had ridden up from Fort Independence for the occasion, bearing gifts of medicine for the town's supplies and a beautifully carved wooden horse for Emma. As Sarah walked toward him on Mr. Walker's arm, Emma preceding them with a basket of flower petals, Sam felt his breath catch in his throat. Sarah wore a simple gown of ivory silk, her auburn hair piled atop her head with a few artful curls framing her face. She looked radiant, her green eyes never leaving his as she approached. The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt. Sam and Sarah had written their own vows, promises of love and fidelity that acknowledged the unusual beginning of their relationship and the journey that had brought them to this moment. When Sam spoke of riding through the night for Emma, more than one handkerchief appeared among the guests, and Mrs. Walker dabbed openly at her eyes. "By the power vested in me," Reverend Thomas concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Samuel, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was sweet and reverent, a promise sealed before their community. When they turned to face their friends, Emma rushed forward to embrace them both, and the three of them walked back down the aisle together, a family united at last. The celebration continued well into the evening, with food and drink flowing freely, music provided by local fiddlers, and dancing under the stars. Sam danced first with his new wife, then with a beaming Emma perched on his boots, and finally with Mrs. Walker, who whispered tearfully, "Your parents would be so proud of the man you've become." As the night drew to a close, Sam and Sarah prepared to depart for their new home, where they would spend their first night as husband and wife. Emma, however, would remain at the ranch for 2 nights, enjoying what Mrs. Walker had described as a special adventure with plenty of pampering and attention. "Are you sure she'll be all right?" Sarah asked worriedly as they said their goodbyes. It would be her first night away from Emma since the child was born. "She'll be fine," Mrs. Walker assured her. "Harold's already promised to show her the new foal in the morning, and I've got cookie baking planned for the afternoon." Emma hugged her mother tightly. "I'll be good, Mama." "And you'll be back soon." "Very soon," Sarah promised, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Be sure to mind Mrs. Walker." "I will," Emma promised solemnly, then turned to embrace Sam. "Goodbye, Papa," she whispered, using the title for the first time. "Take care of Mama." Sam's heart swelled at the simple words. "I will, Emma. Always." The ride to their new home was quiet, both Sam and Sarah lost in their own thoughts about the day and what lay ahead. When they arrived, Sam insisted on carrying Sarah over the threshold, a tradition his mother had always spoken of fondly. Inside, the house was warm and welcoming, with lamps lit, and a small fire crackling in the hearth, the work of Joe Turner, who had ridden ahead to prepare the house for their arrival. On the kitchen table sat a basket containing bread, cheese, dried fruit, and a bottle of wine, along with a note from Mrs. Walker wishing them happiness. "Welcome home, Mrs. Jackson," Sam said softly, setting Sarah on her feet but keeping his arms around her waist. Sarah looked up at him, her expression a mixture of joy and something deeper, more profound. "I still can't believe this is real," she admitted. "That night when Emma was so sick, I thought I might lose everything. Instead, I found you." "We found each other," Sam corrected gently. "And now, we have the rest of our lives to be grateful for it." Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Sarah's head resting on Sam's chest, he reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them to this moment. A desperate ride through the night, a child's life hanging in the balance, and the courage of a woman who had faced adversity with unfaltering strength, all had combined to give him a family and a future he had never dared to imagine for himself. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah murmured sleepily against his skin. Sam pressed a kiss to her hair. "About how sometimes the darkest nights can lead to the brightest mornings." Sarah's soft laugh warmed his heart. "That's very poetic for a cowboy." "I'm full of surprises," he teased, tightening his arm around her. "You have a lifetime to discover them all." "I'm looking forward to every one," she replied, tilting her face up for his kiss. The years that followed were good to the Jackson family. Sam continued working at the Walker Ranch, eventually becoming foreman when the previous one retired. Sarah's vegetable garden expanded into a small but profitable business supplying the town's general store and hotel with fresh produce. Emma thrived in her new life, growing into a confident young girl who excelled in the town's small school. 2 years after their wedding, Sarah gave birth to a son they named Thomas Harold, honoring both her first husband and Mr. Walker. Little Tommy, as he was called, had Sam's blue eyes and Sarah's auburn hair, and was doted on by his big sister from the moment he arrived. "He's so tiny," Emma marveled, peering into the cradle Sam had crafted. "Was I ever that small?" "Even smaller," Sarah told her, watching proudly as Emma gently stroked her brother's cheek. "But you grew strong, just as Tommy will." "Because Papa brought the medicine that saved me," Emma stated with the certainty of an 8-year-old who had heard the story many times. It had become part of family lore, told and retold on special occasions how Sam had ridden through the night to Fort Independence, how Midnight had been injured but struggled on, and how that desperate journey had ultimately brought them all together. As Tommy grew, so did the Jackson family's prosperity. With careful saving and Mr. Walker's guidance, Sam was able to purchase additional land adjoining their property, expanding into cattle raising on a small scale. By the time their second son, James, was born in 1883, the Jacksons were considered one of Keeler's success stories, a family that had overcome hardship through determination and hard work. On warm summer evenings, they often sat together on the wide porch Sam had added to the house, watching their children play in the yard while the sun set behind the Sierra Nevada mountains. During one such evening, as they celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary, Sarah leaned against Sam's shoulder, her hand finding his. "You ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" she asked quietly. "If you hadn't come to our door that night." Sam's fingers tightened around hers. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I prefer to think about how things did turn out, about all we've built together." Sarah smiled, watching as Emma organized a game of chase with her brothers, her patient instructions to 3-year-old Tommy and baby James on her hip, reflecting the nurturing spirit she'd inherited from her mother. "I used to think Thomas's death was the end of everything," Sarah said softly. "That Emma and I would always be alone, always struggling. I never imagined we could find this kind of happiness again." "Life has a way of surprising us," Sam replied, drawing her closer. "Sometimes with challenges, sometimes with blessings." Sarah turned in his arms, her green eyes as bright and captivating as they'd been the night he first came to her door. "You were our blessing, Samuel Jackson, the answer to a prayer I was too afraid to even whisper. And you were mine," he murmured against her lips. "A prayer I didn't even know I was making." As the children's laughter echoed around them and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Sam Jackson held his wife close, grateful beyond measure for that desperate night ride that had led him home to the love of his life. What had begun as an act of neighborly kindness had blossomed into a love story that would sustain them through all the seasons of their lives together, a testament to the extraordinary power of ordinary courage and the enduring strength of a heart willing to risk everything for love.